r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. What's a harmless thing from your childhood that's actually kind of dark in hindsight? Being 4, sent into a convenience store with a note to buy my mom's lark cigarettes, then using the car lighter to start one. As in, putting the filter up to my lips, taking the lit lighter out, and inhaling a puff or two to get it started, before handing it to her as she drove. She couldn't go inside because she had to stay in the car with my 2-year-old brother and was 8 months pregnant. Yes, 4 years old. Gen Xer. At the age of 8, I was cooking pancakes and eggs, changing diapers, and babysitting the baby for hours a day. Now, I was raising myself and my brother like my sister did for me. My mom had breast cancer when I was pretty young, and I thought it was a normal life stage. Once I was drawing pictures of myself throughout my life, and I drew myself in grade school, then in college, then when I got my first job, when I got married, had kids, had breast cancer, retired, had grandkids, etc. Like each of those things were normal milestones. My dad had a pretty severe stroke at 39, and I've been waiting for my husband to have his this year. Like, that's just what happens, right? I logically understand that that's not a thing, but in my brain, that's just how it goes. I've been preparing myself to be the wife and deal with doctors and insurance and family upheaval since I was 8 years old. That's just what you do, right? My mom constantly cleaning. Once I watched her give her friend a cup of coffee. She turned and wiped the counter, then took the coffee cup, emptied it, washed it, and put it away. The friend never even got to take a sip. She swept, mopped, and vacuumed daily, even checked under beds for dust. Realized years later that it was a sign of my dad's abuse. He was awful. My mom was really big on always telling me the truth, and that sounds like a good and harmless thing, but when there are no boundaries, and heavy, difficult, painful, scary information is shared with a 4-year-old, without age-appropriate modifications or protections, yikes. Being left in a car for hours, while my dad went and did or bought drugs. Nothing bad ever happened, but when I slip up and casually mention it to people, they treat me like I was kept in a cage. Instantly makes me remember that it isn't a normal thing to happen, and was probably more dangerous than I perceived it to be. When I was little, I would listen to music on the radio. I laid on my stomach on the floor of my room, and would stare at a small bowl and daydream for hours at a time. I thought it was normal, and I was just poor and bored. Apparently I was maladaptive daydreaming and dissociating from my traumatic life with formerly homeless and druggy parents. As a child, my mother would get angry at me for not grooming myself properly and not cleaning up around the house. Meanwhile, she never taught me how to do any personal grooming, cleaning, or chores. She just expected me to somehow magically figure it out on my own, and would get angry if I didn't do something, or did it wrong. The moldy fridge, constant clutter, leaking roof, and decaying floor. It didn't faze me as a kid, but looking back, it was bad. As a child, I would have to call the local bar, ask for my father, and then ask him to come home. I thought I was being a helpful kid and telling daddy how I missed him, but in reality, I was used as a way to guilt my dad into coming home. My mum is obsessed with puppies, kittens, and babies to an extent. As a child, it was normal for us to have 2 or 3 dogs and cats at once, and being the oldest child, I was expected to look after them and train them. Then, every year or so, she would wait for my sister and I to go to school and would sell the dogs and cats to someone else. A new puppy or kitten would be there when we got home, and if we ever mentioned the other animals, she would say, "This is your dog or cat now, talk about this one." And then the whole cycle would start again. I was so attached to the dogs in particular, and always wondered what happened to them. I didn't realize this was so harmful to me until she did it again last month and wanted my young son to be excited about her new puppy. I surprised myself with the strength of my response. She's still avoiding speaking to me, and I'm not mad about it. We had a highway in our backyard, and whenever there was an accident, my father would get the flashlight and take me, and we'd go to investigate. One time there was a motorcycle accident, and I saw the helmet. Then I saw the body. But it had no head. It was in the helmet. I was about 10 years old. Obviously, at 63, I still never forget it. A friend, now retired, was a crash investigator. One evening he got called out to a scene exactly as you described. Helmet had the head inside, detached from the body. My friend called his partner over and said, "I know this guy." My 8-year-old blonde crush from down the street taught me how to tongue kiss when I was like 6. It wasn't until recently that I wondered who had taught her. When as a little kid, I asked my dad for permission to do something that he didn't want to say yes to, he'd instead pretend it was my mom asking, not me, and threaten to beat her up for asking. It was his way of letting me know it was a no. I remember my brother crying because he got a bad grade, and my dad threatened to hit my mom, as if she was the one that got the bad mark. My dad actually uses it as an example for why such actions were necessary. My brother never got a low mark ever again. Over the years, I picked up the ability to numb out, space out, and forget things. Which apparently is a trauma response. What's my trauma? Who knows? I was too busy numbing out and forgetting. I was fighting with my sister in the backseat of the car. Mom pulled over, made me get out, and drove away. I was all alone under a highway underpass for about 10 minutes until they came back. I suppose I was 9 years old. I do not trust my mom at all to this day, and I have some abandonment issues. Being praised for my skinny body or adults commenting on it as if I wasn't a young or prepubescent kid. You can imagine the lasting effects as my body changed over the decades, and trying to accept myself for not being the same size as a skinny child. I had a baby raccoon called Cooney. He was my best friend. Whenever we had family dinners, my sibling and I, up until we were roughly age 13, were told to go sit under the dinner table while the adults ate. We were only allowed back out after my grandfather knocked on the table 3 times in a row. When I was 8 or 9, my older male cousins would send me into the convenience store with money to buy whatever they wanted because the guy at the counter would always give me free stuff if I was alone. Dude got arrested for being a child predator a few years into my teens. I'm lucky I never took him up on his offer of checking the back for more snacks with him. My sister and I would be seen, not heard. Not want anything to eat or drink when offered while visiting others. And all parents wanting their kids to be like us. Realized later, this was trauma. We were minimizing ourselves, wants, needs, thoughts, because we felt we were a burden at home. I grew up in a rural community with nothing to do. For entertainment, when we'd see ambulances or smoke or anything similar, my mom would put us in the car to go investigate. I remember being very young ambulance chasers. It seemed exciting when I was little. Now I'm like, what the hell? Thank goodness we never saw anything overly traumatic. I wouldn't expose my kid to such things. Being told, go ahead and call the cops. I'll beat your ass before they get here, then they can gladly take me to jail. I used to live way out in the boonies as a kid. I'd be dead before they ever got there. Had a garage refrigerator full of canned soda in nearly every brand and flavor, with no limitations or restrictions on how many I could have. Needless to say, I hated water for much of my life, and still struggle to drink it without adding flavoring. Proud to say, I haven't had a single soda in 3 years. I used to tear strips of paper off old paperback books we had lying around when I was super hungry and there was nothing to eat in the house. When I was around 14, I was having an early coffee in the local park with my dad. As one of the waiters was coming over to bring the drinks, I hadn't met this one before. He said to my dad, "So this must be your mistress?" We laughed it off as a slightly weird offhand joke, and my father explained that I was his daughter, after which the man apologized. Found the interaction a little bit weird, but thought not much of it. Fast forward 4 years, and it turns out my dad has spent 15 years cheating on my mum with not only several relationships and affairs, but seeing hundreds, maybe even thousands of escorts and prostitutes. He was quite close with that one waiter, and apparently sometimes brought the women to the cafe with him. Some of them were only a few years older than me. That's why the waiter had assumed I was one of them. Being told that I was so mature for my age, especially by older men. My mom used to hold my brother and I down and tickle us until we cried and begged her to stop. She said, "You're laughing so you must like it." As a kid, her being my mom made it hard for me to stand up for myself. Now, anytime someone tickles me, I just shut down or start crying or yelling after I catch my breath. That was a fun conversation with my boyfriend. Our house didn't have power sometimes, or basic utilities, because we were dead broke, so my mom would make games out of it and say we were camping sorta. Of course naive me wouldn't understand what was going on, but yeah, we weren't just eating ramen noodles in the dark for fun. Oddly thought, it was really the only times I had a normal bond with my mom, as she was quite abusive. Something about the situation just made her calm. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more. Have a nice evening. Tell your friends about me.